Good afternoon. I'd like to now call to order this meeting of the Jefferson County Public Utility District Number 1 Board of Commissioners meeting. It is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023 at 3 p.m. The first order of business is ascertaining that we have a quorum of the Board of Commissioners. I am Kenneth Collins, Commissioner for District 2 and Chair of the Board.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner for District 1.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum. Jefferson PUD is offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise your hand indicating your desire to speak. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda itself. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
Yeah, I had a proposal. We got a call from Chris Nelson of Main Street and wanted to add an item of possible future contribution to the Main Street program in 2024. So in order to discuss and possibly take action on it, I think we would have to add it to the agenda.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thanks, Dan. I think that counts as a second.
Did you make a motion?
So I moved, yes, to add that item. Do we have to take 2 votes or can we make a motion for a modified agenda?
I think we can do that.
Okay, I move that we accept the agenda with the addition of Main Street funding for 2024.
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion is approved. That becomes item 9.3. Item 3 on the agenda is public comment. Any members of the public wish to use this time?
I do.
Sir,
I stand or sit or
whatever you're comfortable with, the mic should pick you up.
sitting is better. My name is Greg Knowles. And I'm here for 2 reasons today. One of them, to see if I can get you to reimburse me for a water line leak that I had in July and August of 2022. And to see if I could get you to consider modifying your policy for rates relative to tap size for people that are at high elevations. My wife and I, we own 2 homes on Kennedy Road, one at 451 and one at 527. And in September of 22, while we were on vacation, I looked at the email and discovered a high bill for July for 3,500 gallons, which is 3 times normal. And then in September for 30,200 gallons. And was billed accordingly. On the return from vacation, we found a broken elbow, repaired it, submitted the paperwork for reimbursement, and was denied because PUD had us billed as a commercial. According to the PUD definitions, a residential service is one that's servicing a building, facility, or structure that is associated with a residence, which we are. We were not aware that PUD had considered us commercial until the leak occurred. And we later discovered our commercial label when you changed the billing forms in January of 2021. But it wouldn't have made any difference to complain about it because the residential and the commercial are the same. And it didn't make any difference until we had the leak and were denied. The next part is that our pressure of our system is low at the house. It was fine when we were on city water. And the previous owners had installed the 1-inch taps, not me. I bought the house with both houses with 1-inch taps. And at the house, we have about 20 5 pounds of pressure with a 1-inch tap. And Eric Story was kind enough to put in a 5/8, which saved us $117 a month for 2 houses at the commercial rate. And we had a drop in pressure of about 3 pounds. And I guess my argument is that for those of us that are 207 feet and the reservoirs at 269 feet, if I had a 1-inch tap, it gives me more pressure, but I don't know why I would be billed at the higher rate. I'm not using any more water. And I talked to Samantha Harper and Eric Story, and they said that they would consider all this, and I've not heard back. So I guess I'm here to ask you to consider that policy change. So that we could have a minimum pressure. Supposedly at the tap is supposed to be 30 pounds at the water meter. And I don't know what it is at the water meter, but I know at the house it's 25. And now with the 5/8 inch tap, it's down to about 23. That's what I've come to ask for, and I'd like you to consider it. And I want to thank your working with me. They were all kind, and they couldn't do anything because they don't set policy. You guys do. Coming to you. But
So we will certainly consider this and get back to you. It doesn't make much sense to me since you're talking about residences. And the larger tap gives you better, but not wonderful water pressure. So,
And we have talked about your situation a couple times. Your letter was brought up to us, but I don't recall that we resolved it. So I think it's
never got an answer, which is why I'm here.
Appreciate
Telling you
it.
face to face.
Thank you.
Okay. That's all I got to say.
Okay.
Kevin, can we discuss this the next time you and I confer?
Yeah, we'll bring something back to the board, recommendation. Jean's worked on this. She has a lot of information. Yeah, we'll bring something back to the board at the next meeting, and I will visit with you the next time we talk, Ken.
Very good. Thank you.
And just, Kevin, just a quick question on it. Is part of the issue that is the leak policy different for residential customers versus commercial customers?
Correct. We're, I'm going to say probably more generous with the residential customers.
Understood. Yeah, so I guess just what I know about it, it seems like there might be a little bit of a conflict in the code versus what we actually do. You know, if we have installed 1-inch meters in the past to deal with pressure problems, but we, define, it just seems like we have a conflict that we haven't really addressed, this particular situation.
Yeah, I don't want to go into detail, but there's a lot more to this than is just being talked about now. But I want Jean to be able to put a report together for you all and bring it back.
Good.
Thank you.
And I will do so.
Hey, Jean.
Roger, is that you at 246?
Yeah, I had a question about on our website, the financial policy that we have posted doesn't look like the one we passed 3 years ago. Could somebody verify that or put our current financial policy up on the website? I guess that begs the question, what policy does the commission and staff follow, the old one, the new one, when they're making financial decisions? Those are questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So Kevin, you had your hand up or your thumb up.
Yeah,
Signifying.
we'll jump in on the website. We'll take a look. If it needs to be updated, we will, and we'll get back with Roger. Somebody will.
Very good. Thank you. Any additional public comment? Mr. Shook,
Yes, thank you. I'm Mitchell Shook with Advanced Stream. Can you hear me there?
yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for taking my comment. I just wanted to congratulate you on the broadband project. It's been my life's work to work on community-owned broadband, public broadband networks with Advanced Stream. You know, we're honored to be invited to the party and proud to be working alongside Will O'Donnell and Cody, your network engineer. These guys are brilliant, and I predict a great success for this project. It's not often that we are able to witness the creation of a utility. I think the last time it happened might have been the electrification of America, and the struggles that we endured at that time with public power fighting the incumbent monopolists are very similar to the power struggles, I guess, are similar to the telecom struggles that we're witnessing today. We started 25 years ago and have been fighting. I've had a front row seat to these struggles. So they will never give up. Beware that you guys are in the crosshairs as the poster child. I think right now in Washington State, your project and Lewis County project are probably the two most notable projects that are, that are onboarding and about to launch. So just be aware that you're going to be, finding all kinds of reasons why they wouldn't want you to succeed, I guess, is what you're going to see. You're going to see that they're going to do everything they can do to unseat your project. So just be wise and wary about that. And, we do appreciate the opportunity to be on this network and looking forward to knocking on those doors and helping those customers join the network. There's a lot of hand holding that goes on when they cut the cord and they want to use their Roku and get off that dish TV and use the fiber for their TV. So we'll be there to do that, help them. Even doorbells nowadays and printers, everything needs to be put on the network. So you've got a great team, and I'm Mitchell Shook, the founder of Advanced Stream, and my team, we're right here with you, and we'll be supporting you every step of the way. So thank you.
Thank you. I guess it's a little late to read the
Better late than never.
description of public comment. So the public comment period allows members of the public to comment, naturally, limited to 3 minutes each on any items not specifically listed on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to any public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the chair and are not permitted to disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meeting. After an initial warning by the chair, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting. Now, is there any additional member of the public who wishes to make a comment at this time? Then we will move on to the next item on the agenda. We have 2 executive sessions. The first one, per RCW 42.30.110, Section 1, subsection G, to review the performance of an employee. Mr. Street, approximately how much time will we need for that?
He can't hear you.
If Jeff has to get set up, let's go for 15 minutes. I think we'll need about 10 minutes for discussion.
Okay. So after that, we'll reconvene and then we will adjourn again for the second executive session. And how much time will require?
The second executive session, 40 minutes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you just clarify, Kevin, was it 10 minutes or 15 minutes for the first one?
Depending on how long it takes to get set up, I need to talk for about 10 minutes. So
Okay.
let's shoot for 10. It won't be much more than that.
Thanks.
And I do need Melanie in the first executive session.
Okay. So it is 3:15. That means we'll reconvene at approximately 3:25.
Excuse me. You haven't given the purpose of the second executive session yet?
I will when we're going to reconvene after the first executive session. I'll then announce the purpose of the second executive session and repeat the amount of time allotted for it.
Thank
you. We have concluded the first two executive sessions. The second executive session per RCW 42.30.110, Section 1, subsection I, to discuss with legal counsel potential litigation to which the PUD is likely to become a party. And as stated earlier, we are planning on 40 minutes for this executive session. So it is now 3:27, so that will make it 4:07, I believe. Yeah. We have concluded the second executive session. However, we did not use the time that we had originally allotted. So in the interest of not discussing any items that people had expected to be discussed at the end of the session, we're gonna go on a break until 7 minutes after, which is the time that we had planned to conclude the second executive session. And we will resume the regular meeting of the board at that time. We are now resuming the Board of Commissioners meeting for Jefferson PUD. The next item on the agenda is the manager and staff reports. Mr. Street?
So I have a couple things to bring up for discussion today. And the first one we'll probably discuss in further a little bit later, future meetings. But this came up last week and it's about support letters. I sign a lot of support letters for different organizations, and the question came up, and it's a good question. The board needs to talk about these things, that maybe the board should have more of a say in support letters that the PUD issues. In the past, with a lot of the support letters there for grants and different projects, usually it's a last minute thing. We don't have time to take it to a board meeting. So a lot of times, not a lot of times, I do sign off on letters, and it was brought to my attention it may not be really what the board wants to do moving forward. Kind of up for discussion. It's a touchy topic because we do want to support the people who request for the letters. We get them from the hospital, the county, the city, the port, and we pretty much, when they've requested it, supported their ideas. So bringing it up to this group on how do we want to move forward. I'm good with bringing them back to the group here. It will mean on some we won't be able to, but this is up for discussion.
Commissioner Tupper, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm one of the people that asked about this issue. I don't know if anybody else did or not. And the nexus for this revolved around the recompete process that's going on within the county and different organizations within the county and on the peninsula. So again, because of process, the way that is set up, and it seemed like we were making it more of a specific letter of support for a particular project, when the understanding amongst the group, the ICG in particular, was that we weren't to that stage yet to pick out any particular projects. So that was what prompted my question, was we were actually kind of giving a letter of support to a particular project that may or may not make it through the process and be a project taken on. So, I'm willing to compromise on things. I mean, I realize if we have an entity that has a grant and they want to put in an EV charger and things like that, I don't think that's something that needs a lot of board scrutiny, but I do think that as a courtesy that we should be made aware of any time the utility is going to go on the record in written form in particular of support of something. I think that the board should at least be made aware before that makes it to the press. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
And I agree with that. That makes sense to me that we should be apprised of the support letters that go out and not be reading about it in the press without having any prior awareness.
So Kevin, what I'm interpreting you as saying is that where you have time before the, whatever deadline the organization is dealing with, you might say, for example, in your manager's report, say, we had requests to support the following projects this week, and just give a little synopsis. And then if any commissioners had questions or wanted more information, we could ask it. Is that kind of what you're thinking, or do you have a different process? And then if you didn't have time from a deadline, you would use your own discretion as giving a support letter or not. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say. Is that what you're proposing?
So we almost always give a support letter if it comes from the county, the city, or the port. A lot of times we do things for the hospital. So, those are support letters we always do. What I do think, if time, Jeff, I can bring them up in manager's meeting or manager's report and say, hey, we have this letter. Because I do think, even though the projects may not be important to us, they are important to the other entities. They request the letters. If you have time, those are easy to address. Some of the others that are, a lot of times we only get a day to sign off and have to, get them back so they can get it in the grant or whatever application they're going for. Those become a little bit more problematic because I can send out a quick email saying, hey, we've had a request. I'm going to honor it for this support letter, but there wouldn't be a lot of time for you guys to, you would know that I'm doing it, but you wouldn't, there would be no debate at that time. It would just be, I am sending the support letter back to them signed.
Commissioner Tupper.
Yeah, as it pertains to our fellow stakeholders in the county, other government entities and that sort of thing, I think that we have enough communications. You meet with the other administrators on a regular basis. We meet with other commissioners or council members or whatever in roundabout ways at other organizations. The last minute kind of I'll use the term excuse, to me doesn't kind of fly. There should be enough lead time for them to let us know that they are going to want us on board with stuff. So I would think that there needs to be a better effort than I'd hope that we don't wait till the last second to ask for those sorts of things. I would ask for kind of the same courtesy of them. If they know they have projects or they have grant asks or requirements, that they shouldn't let us know sooner rather than later that they're going to want our support. So to me, there's a little bit of this 11th hour thing that should never happen with the communication lines we have set up within this county between fellow stakeholders and fellow government. So that's again my 2 cents.
And I'm going to put Will on the spot here. As successful grant writers, you're working up to the last minute, fine tuning, trying to get everything awesome so you get the money. So more times than not, the support letters are usually due within a day or two.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of concern of us getting into what is normally the general manager's bailiwick here. For me, I do want to be notified of major things that involve the PUD. We obviously are the ones who approve policies. We're approving the budget. We're approving the rates. We have other responsibilities, but I guess to me, this falls a little bit in a gray area. And if somebody's asking for a support letter that Kevin feels is completely within, already kind of what our goals are, I guess it raises a little bit of a question of does general manager every time have to say, gee, is this something the PUD supports? I don't know. I have to ask the commissioners how many of these do you get, Kevin?
They go in spurts, but we'll get one a month, one, when a lot of grants are coming due different times of season, we'll get 2 or 3 within a week sometimes.
Yeah. And I suppose Dan's point is like, hey, we just need to let everybody know that our board wants to hear about these things. Don't send it to us the day before. And I guess your point pushing back is, hey, we even get in that situation where we're working on it till the last minute of the deadline. So I have a lot of sympathy for organizations trying to get proposals in, and I don't want to be micromanaging what you're doing. So I can kind of see both sides of it.
Yeah, I'm comfortable being informed after the fact, which I would appreciate. But, unless you feel, Kevin, that there's something controversial that the board needs to know about and weigh in on prior to sending out a letter, I'm fine with finding out that we've sent out a letter, particularly in support of any initiatives from our other governmental organizations. So, I don't see that we need to make a significant change here in process. Commissioner Tupper, your hand is up.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for any hard guideline here. I said I view this more as a courtesy, by staff or by the general manager. And again, if there's communication issues here that are time sensitive, I would hope that we'll do our best, whether we're on whichever side of this we're on, to make sure that everybody is made aware of whatever situations, whether it is a grant or whether it is a project or whether it's something else. It seems to me that it wouldn't take that much, to send an email or copy emails or whatever, unless there's sensitive material. And I can't see anything that would require a letter of support being sensitive that it wouldn't be a public record. So again, that's just kind of my 2 cents. Is it's more of a courtesy at this point moving forward. Especially, when it comes to things that are, tied to projects, not grant asks necessarily, but even tied to certain projects, because there is a case it could be made that maybe, we do have things in place that it isn't in the utility's best interest to support something. I don't know what that would be at this point, but I know other entities within the county look at it from that maybe there are things that are being proposed by other governmental entities or, businesses or something that would be detrimental to their organization. So again, it's a courtesy thing.
So,
And
Kevin, I think we probably work through this issue. If not having beaten it to death, could you proceed with your report?
And I guess the commissioners are interested in more information when you are writing support letters, I think is the consensus.
I think he probably got that.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I will do a better job moving forward. The next item is specifically on fiber. We're gonna have our crew string all of the fiber in the Quilcene Discovery Bay grant area. Spent some time with Will, a lot of time with Joel, going back and forth on making sure that what we're doing is kosher and that we're following what we're allowed to do. So couple reasons that our crews are going to continue. We've strung 3 pond areas, not full grant areas, but 3 pond areas. And our crews are as efficient as construction crews are out they are getting approximately a mile of fiber a day. It keeps some of our money local to within our local people. We can use some of their time as part of the match in kind. Because of some of the budget restraints, it helps us out there. And it gives us a jump on, bringing contractors in. And another thing, if our crews do it, it's going to give us a bigger bidding pool for the underground projects, because they don't have to qualify to be in the electrical zone like they would have had to if we bid it out as a bigger project. So, when we brought the third crew on, it was to help with fiber. This is just an extenuation of that. And our crews have really embraced what they're doing. They've gotten in and done a lot of work, and a shout out to them making this possible. So we are going to move forward with our crews to continue string fiber. Any questions?
I just wanted to say that when you just say our third crew, it just seems like when we have 3 crews, we're able to do more better things,
Yeah.
So it just kind of puts a smile on my face when you say our third crew. That's great.
And then the last thing on my list is I had a meeting with WASDOT today, and in our grant areas, we have a lot of state easements, right-of-ways, where our conductor and our communication line running parallel to a state highway has to be 20 feet above is the lowest conductor or telecom that is allowed by the state. And that's caused us to put some a lot more make-ready work into our broadband work. Grants dollars are going to rebuild the electrical, not to build broadband infrastructure. The state was awesome today. The state said, we are not going to give you a blanket yes to go down to 15.6 or do some of these others, but we will review your requests, and in a lot of these areas, we'll work with you. We'll allow you to do things. So the working with WASDOT and the county had already agreed to do some things. This is going to save our grant money to do what it was intended to do: build fiber, not rebuild the electrical system. So I'm going to give a shout out to WASDOT. It was a great meeting. They were very receptive. They are going to work with us, and it's good for the state and the grant monies. The region we're working with, they have 7 counties. We're one of the 7. And this is one example where we took some stuff to WASDOT. They heard, and they're willing to not only work with us, but change some things. And, government working at its best when we can all look at what's best for not only our customers, but residents of the state. So that was probably it was probably the only good meeting I went to today, but it was very productive, and it saved us some dollars. So, and that's the end of my report, unless there's questions.
That's very good news.
Yeah.
If there are no questions, why don't we?
I do have one question for Kevin, and I know we spoke to some of our state legislators about this issue a while back. Do you think there was any influence put forward on that, or do you think this is just between you and WASDOT? Is there any more credit we should be looking at giving anywhere?
I have a feeling that yes, the powers that be have talked to him, but the Devin, the regional guy that he did not say that, but our meeting today was one of those rare, great governmental meetings that was productive and things got done. So I think it's all of the above, Dan.
The reason I ask is because as the legislative session comes up, we're going to be beating them up, they being DOT, about the, fish barrier replacement projects and that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure we don't step on toes. I also don't want to, ease off on that issue either, because there's real dollars involved in that too. That they're giving us this bone if we quit chewing on the other bone type of thing. So I just kind of curious as to what the motivations might be, whether there was pressure, or whether this is out of the, lack of a better term, kindness of their heart.
I'm going to say a combination, but I will say this, Dan, it shows a willingness to reach out to PUDs and others to work together. So I think it could be a good thing for a lot of the other issues we're having.
So on that note, Commissioner Randall, do you want to lead off with Commissioner reports?
Sure. Since our last meeting on the 18th, I had meetings with Kevin Street and Craig Nelson of NOAANET. On the 24th, listened in on the PPC fuel meeting and traveled to the Tri-Cities for the Energy Northwest board meetings. And the board meetings were pretty eventful this time. They started off with a group of operators who wanted to make a public comment to the Energy Northwest board. And there was a theme going through these meetings. And one of the themes was Energy Northwest probably cut their budget for staffing too hard in the period of the last, half dozen years or so. They got below 1,000 staff. And one of the factors is that they don't have enough operators, it sounds like right now, and they're not compensating their operators at the same level that the hydro system is. So they were there to basically say, we're not happy. And I talked to Bob Schutz, the head of the staff of Energy Northwest, and he basically said they have a point. We've paid we've given our management increases at which we haven't done the same thing with some of our staff. So that was one of the themes. Another theme was the pressure that BPA puts on Energy Northwest. They have to have their budget approved by BPA every year. And BPA has tried to keep it at inflation, which this last round they're saying is 4%. And some of the problems they're having, they had 2 white findings that related to work that was done in May of 21. And those are, potential harm to the environment or potential harm to your people. And they had a couple of their employees inhale some, potentially radioactive material through one of their operations. So white findings is not a good thing to have happen in the nuclear industry. So they were embarrassed by that. And they're admitting that, and they're not able to run the Columbia generating station at 100% right now due to equipment issues, equipment that hasn't been maintained and hasn't been replaced properly. So they have a number of issues that all kind of relate around the same things. And the executive board was taking note of that. And I think the management is getting the message that they have to address those things. Another issue that was notable that came up was they announced that there is a investor-owned utility that hasn't been named that they are currently in negotiations with for the investigation into a small modular nuke at the Tri-Cities site, Energy Northwest site. And they're in negotiations for funding of $10 million that would be paid in 4 chunks of $2.5 million. And right now they're in negotiations about what would that get the investor-owned utility, what benefits would they get? And it sounds like they're kind of looking at, okay, if this ever comes to be and it makes power, we get the power equivalent of $10 million plus some additional return on investment. So that's where they're at, and they're not ready to announce who it is, and they're just in negotiations. In addition, their staff is still was looking to BPA they had put in a formal $10 million request from BPA. PPC had issued a letter of support, and Joel Cook was there from BPA, and he just flat out announced, this is not something we can give you money for. This is a specific project. We are statutorily not allowed to invest in a specific project like this. However, BPA will be granting additional rebates to utilities that purchase power from BPA in an amount sufficient that if some public utilities got together, they could collectively contribute that same amount of money. So the Energy Northwest staff weren't happy with that response, on the sidelines. And I had some PUD other commissioners who said, no, if BPA wanted to do it, they really could, but they were pretty much flat out saying, you're not going to get that money from us because we feel like we can't do it. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to see similar rebates like we did this last year, credits on our bill with BPA. And there's going to be an effort from Energy Northwest staff to come back to our utilities and perhaps offer some sort of similar contract as they have done, or they are negotiating with this unnamed IOU for support of the exploration. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that.
Yeah, you lost me. What was the nature of the project?
So this is the small modular nuclear project that is the exploration of, does it make sense to pursue? And it's big money. You know, they need like $65 million before the end of next year, I think, to keep going quickly. So anyway, so we're going to be getting money back from our BPA bills, and Energy Northwest will probably be coming to us.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So staying on the IOU, you said the 10 million, that was similar to what's been going on, right? The IOU would give 10 million to BPA towards the small modular, the first
BPA,
installment.
Energy Northwest.
Sorry, Energy Northwest. And then for a concession as well, that once it goes into place, they would get obviously some return on their investment, or maybe they get power in lieu of or a credit or something to that effect to get some of the green initiative out of that nuclear power towards their utility. Is my understanding that's kind of the way that was being presented?
That's the discussion. It's not a reality. They're in negotiations. And I guess to finish it off, staff was there asking for approval of a resolution to do this. And the board said, well, wait a minute, you're not really telling us what you're doing. You're not defining in any way the scope of what you're negotiating. So the board asked for more information about the nature of the negotiations and what might go into that contract before they authorized staff to sign it. That's where it ended.
So the 10 million, you could also look at that as maybe offsetting the ask they were going to make of BPA. If BPA weren't to come forward with money, would it kind of offset that?
They need something like 100 million really soon if they want to keep this going. So I don't think it's instead of, they need a lot of money before the end of next year. Like I said, in the range of 65 million.
Yeah, with utilities already giving money like we've done, I don't see the redistribution clause credit or money being redistributed back. I think that might be a heavy lift.
That will be an interesting discussion. Yeah. And I think that's where Energy Northwest was thinking. It's like it would be challenging to come to each utility and ask for that money and put together another $10 million package. But I think they will. That'll be an ask. Any other questions before I proceed? Okay. Let's see. Continuing on. I had a question for Kevin and Will. So because we agreed to contribute some money to Energy Northwest, we're supposed to be part of the discussions now. And apparently their staff meets weekly or semi-weekly. And they said, this is what Greg Cullen said, they send us a notification that they're meeting and we could join in on the meeting if we want to. Is that your understanding? Are we getting notices about these briefings of what's happening?
I haven't seen anything like that.
Kevin?
I do get notices, Jeff. I'm going to have to go in specifically because I'm invited to, a lot of meetings. I don't know if they're the ones you're talking about specifically on this. I'll have to look back in.
So if you could look, and I asked Greg Cullen, hey, if, I wanted to listen in on that just to get the update. He said it's fine. And he's already sending that to you. So if you find that, please forward those on. Let's see. Sorry to move ahead here. So yeah, they're going to be looking at, continually looking at the risks and off ramps and some of the risks they identified, that they're getting more of a hard feel on is that the fuel costs for this TRISO fuel for the X Energy project is coming in higher than they expected. And, so they'll keep monitoring those things and keep the board apprised as to points to jump off if it's getting to be too steep a climb. They had some good news on charging stations. Energy Northwest has been awarded $13 million to install fast chargers. This includes the SR20 corridor heading east to west, and that comes down to Port Townsend. So one of those fast chargers is coming to us, and I think it's the one that's going in at the chamber. They expect to have them installed by 2026. There will be additional ones heading north to Anacortes and then east on the SR20 corridor. They're going to applying for the next round. Will be applying for charging fast chargers on Highway 101 on the Washington and Oregon coasts. So the division of Energy Northwest that's going after electric vehicle charging is really doing well. And somebody asked, what's the business plan for this? And they said, well, we expect to be paid back in about 5 years on these chargers. So that's kind of their business model. In more small modular nuke reporting, Tim Sheldon went to a Northwest Power Conservation Council meeting and said something that I hadn't heard before, but Oregon actually has a prohibition against new nuclear going into the state of Oregon until there is a national repository for nuclear waste. So Oregon's kind of off the table with that statute and the books. And then I sat next to Bear Prairie, who at the PPC meetings, who gave me an update on the NuScale project in Idaho. And apparently, and some other people mentioned this too in open meetings, that for the NuScale project at the Idaho, I don't know if it's an NREL site, it's a federal site that we've heard talked about before. It's one of the ones that's funded by the Department of Energy. For that one to go forward, they have to have an 80% sign up to take the power. Those contracts have to be in place by the end of this year. They're only at 20%. And they have just found out some really bad news on the roads and bridges in the area where it would go aren't designed to handle the weight of the thing that would be manufactured off-site, this modular nuclear plant. The roads and bridges can't handle it. So the NuScale project in Idaho appears to be falling apart. And maybe dead by the end of the year. We don't know yet. So that was Energy Northwest and the Public Power Forum on the 30th. Attended the Port Townsend High School with Jimmy Scarborough and Jameson Hahn, and the three of us gave a presentation to the senior physics class, which was really fun. And the kids had good questions about career opportunities, and Jimmy and Jameson did a great job. On the 1st through the 3rd, went down to Portland for the PPC town hall meeting, and then stayed for the PNUC meeting on Friday. And it was the annual meeting, so it was a little different format, but PPC had some really good speakers. I think Dan was there too, so he may want to chime in. But they had a representative from FERC who talked about RTOs, and he in general just felt that we should be here in the Northwest cautious about entering an organized market. Then there was a representative from a Nevada IOU who talked about how Nevada actually passed legislation requiring all their utilities to join an RTO. So they have to join a market. And Nevada is actually, we've talked about the need for transmission. Nevada is building transmission all around the periphery of their state. So they're trying to address some of their needs. And then there was a representative from Arizona, the Salt River Project, which is a nonprofit utility with 2 million customers in the Phoenix area. And both the Nevada and the Arizona person basically said, because there was a lot of discussion about both transmission and participating in markets at both the PNUC meeting and the PPC meeting. And the Arizona and Nevada guy said, down in the Southwest, we're investing a lot in solar and we're investing a lot in storage. And there's a lot of the time when we've got more solar energy and it's cheap, that we could share with the Northwest. And there are times we realize that the Northwest has some excess hydropower. So we see that the two of us could work together. So there were interesting conversations happening where some people were saying, be conservative about getting in or cautious about getting into a market. And then some other folks were saying, well, we're looking at these Southwest power pool markets and we think there's opportunities for the two of us to work together going forward. So lots of interesting discussions, and they were seeing about 4% growth a year in the Arizona market for electricity. They're seeing lots of industry starting up. I think they said they had a big some big chip factories going in, and they're putting in 10,000 megawatts of solar by 2035 and 1,000 megawatts of pump storage soon. So anyway, lots of interesting things happening down there. The PNUC meeting was the first one I've attended in person, and I've told you guys a little bit about PNUC. I think you guys can also participate in some of those meetings to get a flavor of them if you want to. And one of the quotes said early on, why PNUC? And the quote was, "We are public power and we're IOUs, but we serve the same customers. And the reason we get together is the chance to look at issues together, look at projected load growth, and look at creative ideas." And found out that Klickitat PUD just joined PNUC, and they had a panel where they had a person from the Western Power Pool talking. They had a person who was an expert on the new grid, where we need to go, and he had worked at FERC in the past. And they talked about congressional policies, and they all kind of saw that Congress is concerned about transmission, but it's one of those issues that's not going to get passed by itself, and permit reform for transmission. So we're likely to see it maybe attached to some other big omnibus bill. We might see some permitting reform on transmission that Congress seems to get it, and the White House gets it. And the White House is working with their agencies to try and do creative things without new legislation. So anyway, it was a great meeting. And one of the funny things that happened is the guy who was talking about transmission talked about markets. And he said, we've had markets in the East for a while. And when you look at joining a market, one of the areas that's a concern is where you have two markets adjacent to each other, and you have this gap in between, and the policies of the two markets don't line up, and you end up with what he called seams. And I'm asking this question of him about the Southwest Power Pool and CAISO and how their policies might create these seams. And I look, standing right across from me is Elliot Mainzer who runs CAISO. So I was just thinking, wow, this PNUC group is a cool group to be a part of, because you never know who you're going to be able to talk to. On the 8th, I listened in on the NOAANET board meeting, or actually on the 8th, I'm going to the NOAANET board meeting down in Olympia. The 9th and 10th, I'll be out of town for this orchestra retreat for my son, and I'll listen in on the BPA contracts workshops on the 14th, and I'll be planning to go in person to the WAPUTA meetings in Olympia, and that is my report. So thanks for letting me talk a little longer on some of those things.
Thank you. Commissioner Tupper.
Thanks. Well, I'll streamline a little bit since Jeff took a little longer, so we'll balance out a little bit as best as streamlining can be. So I attended the WAPUTA Budget Committee meeting in Olympia on October 19th. There were discussions that revolved around whether there's value in WAPUTA membership in MRSC, how WAPUTA reserves will be classified and utilized in the budget for 2024, whether or not a facility study should be undertaken, because the staff or some of the members are concerned about how, WAPUTA staff is great at what they do, but are they really that good on the real estate side of things? So, and the upkeep on the building and rent and those sorts of things, of how that's going to work. So I think that's something that's going to be added in is that facilities review. And then staff wage increases are proposed at 3%, and membership dues will likely increase around 4%. George Kahn will remain on through April as a consultant to assist WAPUTA staff and the lobbying group as they work through the legislative session in Olympia. Liz Anderson will remain in charge of communications and be the new executive director at the beginning of the year. The plan, it sounds like, is to stay one person short and hire a regional, or possibly hire a regional office manager as a new employee somewhere along the way, or contract someone to fill that need kind of as the assistant executive director, and maybe keeping that vacant. They're tossing those two things around for 2024, which path they'll take. So they're trying to be lean and cut costs and be as efficient as they can. WAPUTA staff will bring back an adjusted budget draft to address those things I talked about a little bit a minute ago there. And at the meeting, I think it was in November at this board of directors meeting is when that will come back for maybe a final vote. Met with Kevin Street on October 20th. I also attended the PPC fuel meeting via Zoom, which really it revolved around markets and those sorts of things, and governance as being one of the most important things as we look at markets in the West in particular. I'm obviously in DC with General Manager Street right now for the NRECA Broadband Conference, and we're scheduled to meet with several members of our Washington State Congressional contingent and a few federal group agencies, that sort of thing. I also received a phone call today from Amanda Christofferson, who is a Jefferson County grant writer, and she was the person, if you remember a few meetings back, Kevin and I had a meeting with the county about the Brennan sewer issue and things down there. She was the one that's producing the white paper for the county on the Brennan sewer issue. So she's looking maybe for some feedback from us now that she's getting close to completing, that white paper on how we're looking at things to put it all together. And there may possibly need to be a meeting with our manager or someone next week. Looking ahead, I'm going to be zooming into the NOAANET meeting tomorrow at 8 or on the 8th via Zoom. I'll attend the Jefferson County Fire Chiefs on November 13th. I'll attend the WAPUTA meetings in Olympia, the 15th to the 17th. And I'm not certain yet if I'll be able to attend the ICG meeting on November 16th while we're down there at WAPUTA. I got to look at the schedules and see how all that matches up. And I think that kind of concludes my report at this point in time. So I'll report on what's going on here when we get back at the next meeting.
Very good. Thank you. I met with the general manager on the 20th, attended the special Board of Commissioners meeting on the 23rd, met again with the general manager on the 27th. On the 1st, I attended the PERMS Executive Committee meeting, and then their regular board meeting the following day. And I'd like to go into a little detail about that because there was an issue that came up that would have significant implications for our PUD. And that is the fact that coverage for wildfires, as you can imagine with what happened in Hawaii recently and a recent court decision in Oregon that found a utility responsible for extensive damages. And the result of that is that the insurers that back up PERMS are saying that they need to re-examine and to limit the amount of coverage that they're making available. So previously, what PERMS was relying on, the total coverage available through 2023 has been $100 million. And the first $35 million of coverage is made available through AEGIS. AEGIS is a collaboration of various organizations. It's basically similar to PERMS, but at a different level. And then above that, EIM had been providing the additional coverage, and EIM is saying two things. They're saying that for 2024, they're going to reduce the available coverage by 15 million. And going forward, they're looking to exit the business of providing wildfire coverage. So there's a good deal of discussion now as to how utilities are going to, particularly PUDs, are going to compensate for, first of all, the loss of that $15 million coverage, and then the potential loss of the additional coverage that EIM has been providing. One of the things that was floated by go back to my notes. So we had an insurance broker there, who was briefing us on this, and he had said that he thinks that there needs to be a pool created, particularly involving the large PUDs in central Washington for two reasons. One, they have the greatest exposure historically to wildfire, and two, they have funding. These are utilities that generate power and have capability of really ponying up to help create the fund. And I think this is just at the discussion stage. Steve Taylor from I think he's Okanagan, has been in discussions with Chelan and Douglas and Grant. And so this is something that is beginning to percolate, because losing the coverage provided by EIM would leave utilities very seriously exposed. And in situations where you have risk, if you can pool the risk and distribute it, that provides a margin of relief in a worst case scenario of a really disastrous wildfire. Some of the other things that came out of the board meeting, there's a question that was addressed by the administrator, having to do with whether PERMS meets its obligation for having certain fund balances. And as a matter of fact, they're well in excess of what is required in terms of the balances for the liability pool and property and health and welfare. Jefferson PUD's health and welfare claims are slightly above average. And one of the last things that was done at the general board meeting was election of officers for the coming year. And ordinarily, the vice president moves up to the position of president, and I indicated that I was happy to stay in the vice president's role. And so Don Nuxall will continue in the president's role. And I congratulated him on that. So I'll continue representing us at PERMS and serving on the board. So I met with the general manager on the 3rd, have a meeting scheduled with him on the 10th, and I look forward to attending in person the WAPUTA meeting in Olympia the 15th through the 17th. And that is my report.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Super. One quick thing, and as Jeff alluded to, I was at the November 1st and 2nd PPC meeting, and a couple of things that came out of that meeting that Jeff didn't discuss, and you may all well know. And those two things are, the first is that Irene Scruggs has taken a new position with Northern Wasco utility. So she's no longer the general legal counsel at PPC. So just in case you weren't aware of that, that was one thing that came out of that meeting. And the second one was, in their proposed budget, dues increases for PPC are going to be about an 8% increase, which for us equates to about $3,500 a year. So 2 quick points.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Are there any changes, any items on the consent agenda that need to be taken off and further discussed?
I'll make the motion to move the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Consent agenda has been approved. Item 8 on our agenda is old business. 8.1 being the first item is broadband and BEAD update. That I think would be you, Mr. O'Donnell.
That would be, Kevin, did you have anything you wanted to add before I begin?
No, Will, go ahead.
Share my screen. I'll give a couple updates and I'll talk briefly about BEAD funding. There is a public comment deadline of November 10th for the volume 1, but which I was trying to bring some prepared comments for. But most of what I want to comment on is in volume 2. That deadline is the 30th. So we'll wait for those comments. I'll submit those before the next meeting.
And sorry, just for those who don't know, is this comments to state commerce or comments to the feds, or who are these comments to?
Comments to the state broadband office.
Okay.
On the volumes that they've produced so far.
Okay.
But just to give you a quick update, we're getting closer. We're hoping to have bid documents next week, our contracts ready for review. We've been working with the state and the NTIA on seeking an extension for the project deadline. The Coolseen to Gardner project is supposed to be complete. Construction is supposed to be complete according to the grant by July 31st of 2024. We're going to be seeking extension till the end of the year. That extension has to be requested by the state broadband office. We're going to be seeking a change in scope. They'll either approve that or not. We'll work with them to try to get that approved, and then they'll seek the extension from the NTIA.
Collectively with any other utilities that need extensions. I think that's what you said last time.
Collectively with the sub-grantees of the Washington State Award.
Whoever
So
they are.
that will be, I think they're going to, the state broadband office will put it to the group, and then it'll be a discussion. We'll see if that goes forward, and I'll keep everybody updated.
Okay.
One other thing that we've been working on getting approved is we originally designed the Quilcene to Gardner project as one big area. We had to take out sections that were eligible for funding where Starlink had an award. We then got separate funding to build to those areas. We're trying now to combine some of those two projects because it's literally Swiss cheese. So some areas we have to move through, and in order to help control costs, we would move some of the mileage previously allocated to the Olympic Fiber corridor over to what we're calling the in-betweens. So we're working through the state on some scope changes there as well. So everybody's been very receptive. We continue to move forward. I'll be submitting more plans this week. We have,
Will,
yeah, go ahead.
do you have any kind of a feel for the willingness of the state broadband office to grant extensions?
I don't think they're opposed to it. They just want to, there's some implications for the entire group, and they want to make sure that the entire group is comfortable with it. At least one other entity is looking for an extension besides us within that group. So there's a couple other factors, and I'll report on that as I know more.
Okay.
The NTIA did not seem at all troubled by the possibility of an extension to the end of 2024, though, which was nice to hear. But there's that's not an approval. That's no.
Mm-hmm.
We now have you met Mr. Shook. We have 3 qualified ISPs approved to sell open access over our network. NOPDC, Mr. Leo Boyd's company over here. Mitchell Shook is part of Advanced Stream. They all operate on Mason 3 and Kitsap's network, as well as other places in the state. And then JNet is also on our ISP list. JNet, I think, is more interested in commercial customers than residential. I'm going to go quickly over some of the BEAD funding information. I'm going to be at NOAANET is holding a consortium meeting to talk about possible collaboration on BEAD applications. The design of the BEAD grant is different than I expected. I'll go over a little bit of that. I'll bring back more information at the meeting on the 21st, and I'll circulate some comments before then so that the board has more time to review the information. This was kind of put together a little bit. Once I didn't have to meet that November 10th deadline, I prioritized some other projects, so I only have a brief overview just now. Play the slideshow beginning. There we go. BEAD funding. All right, so the state is looking to receive 1.2 billion to cover all of the customers that will be left unserved across the state. They do not believe that's enough money to cover everyone, but it's enough to make a significant dent, even with the existing funding there. The program rules are in development. The NTIA released its own rules, and then the state customizes some of those rules and comes up with additional scoring criteria. The 5-year plan for the state, the BEAD plan was created from input from the BATS. That was the work that we participated in that was finished early summer. That provided their baseline info for their new volumes 1 and 2 of the rules that they're putting together today, as well as their draft equity program. Volumes 1 and 2 have been released during the last 2 months. Volume 2 was released on the 1st. Public comment is now open until November 30th. That's just for volume 2, but volume 2 has most of the meat in it. In fact, when I read all the comments on volume 1, they were mostly pertaining to items that showed up in volume 2. So that's why I didn't rush to get anything in tonight. And then funding is anticipated likely in fall of 2024 to open. So it will be a while before this money is, before the applications are open, and then even longer until allocation begins. So those projects probably won't start until late 2025 at the earliest. BEAD funding, what's different? The biggest thing that's different about the BEAD funding is that the state itself is determining each project area. We don't come to them with an application to serve a part of our county. They're going to determine what the project area is across the entire state, and then they'll open it up so that the entities can apply to serve those areas. So there can be multiple competitors for each area. Also, they're going to be, I think it's safe to say this, they're encouraging entities to bulk up and apply for multiple grant projects. And that's part of what the consortium discussion with NOAANET is about tomorrow, to see about having NOAANET apply as one entity representing a number of PUDs to serve a couple of areas. So I think that's going to be encouraged. The state has been, it's been a lot of work for them to manage all of the grant projects for all of the grants they've been awarding. So they're looking to reduce some of the labor to manage this very large project. With the funding, you can serve 80% of the construction has to serve residents that currently only have access to 25.3. 20% can go to what's called underserved, which is 100 megabits per second by 20 megabits per second. So volume 1 that came out, I think in October, early October, covers the eligibility and challenge process. The eligible locations list was published in August. Jeffco has 5,075 unserved locations, 857 underserved. I think that's including many of the places that we're going to be building to with our existing funding. I'm a little confused on this process. There's going to be carve-outs for projects that have already been funded, but it may also be part of the challenge process that we have to tell the state that we're going to be serving these areas ourselves. And I'll have more on that. I'm still trying to read through that. Okay.
Where did the data come from to determine that there were 5,075 unserved and 857 underserved?
That's from the FCC maps and from that 5-year plan submitted by the BAT. groups.
And the FCC maps are still considered to be,
They rule the day with coming up with the project areas, and then the challenge process will address some of that.
I mean, and they've basically had that public input on those, but how many people actually looked up their home like I did and submitted a comment saying, these guys you say serve me with these services don't serve me, and you know, the percentage of people that probably did that was probably pretty low. So your assumption that it's undercounting is probably correct, but that's what
that
we
is my
have.
assumption.
But it's like people can anytime, I think, still go and submit.
Yeah,
I think those maps are considered kind of open.
I have to look into that, but they were taking the submissions up until a certain date. I think you can still go in and put in a challenge, but I'm not sure when they were gathering all.
When
those
they'll review them. Yeah.
And for this process with the challenge that goes to the state, it's only ISPs or government agency, and then tribal entities that can actually do the challenges.
Okay.
So it's not open to the public for that challenge. They're considering all DSL customers as underserved, regardless of the speed or what the FCC maps, because there are DSL customers that are getting above 25.3, not a lot of them, but in some areas that is the case. So the state is considering all of them underserved regardless. Submitted speed showing under 120 can qualify as underserved. So that will be the challenge process. If we know there's areas that are not getting 120 or better, we can submit for those areas and served. And so you could serve those areas even if they did have cable internet and just didn't get, and you could document that they were not getting the appropriate bandwidth. The eligible locations list, they're hoping to release it in April of 2024, and it's going to be very interesting to see. I was on Angela Bennett. I'm gonna mute Roger. I was on a call with Angela Bennett and State Broadband Office, where we were kind of asking for more details about the process of how they create the areas, and they haven't settled on it yet. There's a possibility of doing it a lot of different ways. They're trying to find a logical way that makes sense for everybody and reduces the amount of the total number of project areas. So it's not done by, there's talks of doing it by school district or census block. And the issue is that if school districts that can overlap certain areas, it gets confusing. Then just doing it on the county level, they haven't, like I said, they haven't come up with their formal plan for how they will create that. So that will be something we will be watching closely. Volume 2, that's come out, that's got the bulk of the rules for how you do the application and especially the scoring. They've got interesting affordability requirements, and they're really prioritizing having, they're actually setting some target rates that they want to see customers participate in, including having a low income rate with ACP of at least or at a minimum of $25 a month. So some interesting priorities that are coming through. They created these, there's a section in there that I'm gonna look for more information on, and it may be something that we comment on, called project priority areas. And the breakout is areas served with fiber and then other alternatives. But they don't have a different scoring system for there. So it doesn't list how they will determine what's a priority or not. And there's a different speed levels that you have to, it's just a lower, it's a lower speeds are allowed in that other priority area. So I'll present more on this. I won't take too much time. I just kind of wanted to give you an update on what we've been looking at, and we'll continue to come back to the board. Last thing I had is, these were the areas, what we were calling the leftovers. A couple months ago, we were looking at these. It's not the best map. The Discovery Bay area, there's a bunch of little roads in there that we have not put into grant projects that don't have cable service, and they're calling us frequently and want to know when they can be included in another grant. There's pockets down south of 104 going towards Thorndike, like Shine has service, but then some areas do not. The same along Paradise Bay, and then going up to I can't remember the name of that peninsula sticking up there, but a lot of the folks out there don't have anything but DSL and don't have good DSL. They're all small little isolated pockets, so it's going to be difficult to put those areas together. It's also just going to be very interesting to see how the state puts our region together and whether or not it'll cross county lines, or if it'll cross different parts of our electric service area. More to come. Any questions?
Is that the end of your presentation?
That's the end of that presentation.
Thank you. We've heard a lot about BEAD, over and over again. So I appreciate your applying it to what does it mean for us.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you.
Good job.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm ready for the next part if you are.
Yes.
Okay. So I did not want to bring rate changes back so soon. And I'm sure there's hesitancy to consider this. So we're going to have just a discussion about some changes we need to make. We are learning as we go. We are one of very few open access and retail providers in the country. When we went to the CALX conference, we only met 2 others that were doing it. Our CALX reps don't know anybody that's doing it. We're learning as we go on a number of different things. We're also not quite at launch yet. So this is the time for us to make changes and dial things in. And because the board is the governing body, and the difference between us and some of the incumbent providers is that we do our rate decisions in public and give the public the time to weigh in. So I'm bringing it back again. I have a couple of small changes that I want to make. Some of them are significant, and we'll just go over them quickly, and then we'll consider any input, and then we'd like to bring it back on the 21st. First thing is we really only want to charge for necessary services. So we did some initial trial connections, and we found that one of the ways that we hope to earn some revenue, we don't need to sell that option. So we don't want to charge people for it. And that's selling the additional core ports to serve PON customers. And I'll go into that a little bit more. But if we don't have that core port rate, then our existing wholesale PON rates aren't high enough to support the income we need to get the return on that product and to be at our target revenue to support this process. So we found that we did not need to, we also found that in this process, we didn't need to I'll just take a step back to explain this real quick. All right.
Please.
Let's go. No, we want this one. So the way that we expected to be selling, connecting wholesale ISPs to the internet. With the PON network, we have per PON port that's split 32 times, so that can serve 32 customers. The way we do it today, or the way our wholesale business has been on the legacy network, is it's a 1 port, 1 customer. So this is a significant cost savings. When we were looking at doing this, when we came to you for the last rate approval, on a transport product, we're connecting a customer, it's a 1-to-1 to the end customer to 1 port. And then we can either go back to the internet or back to the, I'm going to confuse this again. It's a 1-to-1 connection. We expected that all those transport customers would have their own core port that they would purchase from us and their own endpoint. We'd be selling multiple of those. And then the PON would have to buy its own core port, and then all those PON customers would come back to the core port. So we'd be selling multiple core ports per ISP provider. Ken.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. The transport applies to ISPs.
the transport can apply it to ISP, but to anybody who wants to have a dedicated service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So what we found we can do is we can just, with the one core port, can handle all of the traffic coming from the dedicated and from the pond. We don't have to sell multiple of them. The core port on our core network can handle all of that and then aggregate that information together and then send it right back to the ISP. And it can send it back to them through the ISP, either directly through a fiber, or it can do it through the internet. And in fact, if we have the pond customers, if they're going just back to to the internet and don't need to go to a physical location, they don't even have to buy a core port switch. All of that can be done through the pond port.
Okay.
And routed out. So we're not going to be selling multiple core ports per ISP customer. The core ports are expensive. They're $200 a month, and then each dedicated endpoint is $150. So those are multiple expensive connections that we're not selling. Instead, we're going to just be we're going to be relying on the income solely from the pond connection. So if we can't sell more of these little expensive things over here, we have to get our revenue somewhere else. So we have to raise the wholesale pond rate. And that's what we're bringing forward today.
Okay.
We also wanted to simplify the amount of products that we had. That way we can, that we don't have to do, we want to keep our products and our rates as simple as possible. That's always been a goal. So we found we could eliminate some of the different rates that we had on the table, and then we can just put them as components. So instead of having a pond rate that included no Wi-Fi, but it had internet and it had IP, or there was a pond rate that had no Wi-Fi plus internet but no IP, we just do these as components. You get the pond charge, and then you can buy internet over here, and you can buy IP over here if you want. We just make it simple. It makes it easier to adjust. So that's another change we're bringing today. In our previous rate sheet, if you're buying a wholesale pond, you had to purchase a network transport, or if you were buying internet, you had to purchase network transport. We got rid of that requirement because we don't need it now. If you have you have to have some way to get back that can either be through an aggregation core port, so you don't have to buy additional core ports, or it can go back through the internet, and you have to buy the internet then. And then we reduced the non-recurring charges that go along with setting up those ports. It just doesn't take as much labor as we feared to do that. So we don't want to charge for services that we're not that we're not providing. We reduced the retail transport rate, again, because it's not it's not a huge amount of labor to set that up. We didn't see that there was a great distinction between the two products. We added the IP product, which we didn't have before. That allowed us to sell the IP as its own thing rather than as part of a bundle. We revised the higher tier Wi-Fi mesh product, added a new kind of network control for businesses. And this is something that must have been an oversight in the last rates. The intention was to limit the 150 by 150 megabit per second speed tier or product only to residential customers. We are pretty much selling that at cost. We don't want to be selling that to businesses. So I don't want ISPs to sell that to businesses either. Okay, and that's just the more diagrams showing our IPs. And then this is, I don't think we need to go into any of this. We'll just go right to the, the rates aren't on this sheet. The rates are in the packet, and I can bring them up. Give me a second. Anybody have any questions while I'm doing that? Sounds like a no.
Feels like we're on a sailboat and you just every once in a while you got to trim your sails because the wind changed direction a little bit. And we're going to be doing this over time. You know, we're probably going to be going back and tinkering with rates as we learn more and things change. And
it's not even been 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to give Will like gold star for coming back so soon. You know, that took some dedication.
That's one way to put it.
I thought you were gonna say chutzpah.
Okay, you know, chutzpah, it works for me.
Okay, all right. Oh, I've got it. Go to the homepage.
Did I wait till afterwards or, well, I mean,
When do you want questions, Will, from or
Hmm?
comments?
I think if Leo, if you want to take comments from Leo now, I'm just about there as well, either way.
I mean, I'm gonna assume you both read my email. I know Dan did. You know, like I said in my email, you guys have gone through generation to generation to generation, and you've heard me voice my opinion until this last one, which is like, I really didn't have anything to say because it's like, oh, okay, that they finally got it broken down how the PUDs do it, right? And that's the thing is, you know, it was good. The only thing you had in there that was non-standard was the, you know, PON service with internet and IP, which is not something that is standardly done by a PUD, but it's like, okay, that gives an all-inclusive. If you wanted to go out and sell internet, you knew exactly every month what you were paying, right, to the PUD for these people's internet service. So, but then, you know, the point is, well, we're not making the revenue we thought. Well, you're not charging for products the way that you're talking about setting up now. Well, first off, like that all includes a product. So now you make it a management nightmare for your IT team, because every time somebody doesn't pay their bill, then the ISP's got to contact you, say shut them off. 15 minutes later, they're going to contact you again going, hey, the guy paid his bill, turn him back on. Right. So generally the setup is the ISP gets gets basically the core, pays for a core, then you pay for a connection to the core. So that would be the endpoint. And you can either bring it in from out of the county, like Advanced Stream might bring it in from like Utah, right? And basically it would pop out inside, say, Auto Street or whatever, and they would pay for a core port and then the core charge, and then it would go to the end users. So you charge them that $200 plus $150 plus the PON fee, right? You guarantee that $350 every month. Now the ISP like us, that's how we're set up. Somebody doesn't pay their bill, I turn them off myself. Somebody pays their bill, I turn them back on myself, right? Somebody calls up and says, hey, my internet's not working. I can look and go, okay, do I see something wrong here with your internet? Oh, it looks like you probably got your router plugged in backwards, whatever, you know? So it takes a lot off the PUD as far as management. And that's like, you know, your rates for your PON were like right in line. I mean, I think they were like really right in line. But now you're talking about raising your rates, right? But you're not raising, you're raising the wholesale rate, but you're not raising the rate that you're going to charge your customers, right? So my customers have to pay $15 more a month, but your retail rate, you're not increasing. So they're not having to pay any more money. So does that make sense? You're not increasing your retail rate. You're only increasing your wholesale rate, which means I have to charge more.
So that puts you at a disadvantage, or your
It does.
customers
It very
do.
much does. It very much does, because now you're also, I mean, we're not even at $39 for a port. Okay, we're not making that much money. So after we buy internet, we gotta pay our B&O, we gotta pay for internet, we gotta pay the core charge to transport this, that, and another. I mean, the margins in the internet business are very slim to begin with. So, you know, and I really wish you guys would have somebody that's professionally does rates like this for a living, you know, with, you know, kids at PUD or, you know, Grant or whoever. And look at what they're doing. I mean, so I think your current rates that you have are really, really in line. There are things that products that you're not charging people for that you should, like Advanced Stream. They should be paying for a core port, right? They should be paying for an endpoint. And if they want to buy their internet from you, then they should install a router so that they can manage their customers, right? And, or if they want, you know, they can take it directly, don't have to install a router, can take it directly back to Mason County or whoever. So I don't know if this makes sense to you or not.
Well, I'll be interested in Will's kind of response and thoughts on it, but what I'm hearing Will saying and what I'm hearing you saying, it's almost like the products become a little bit different depending on or the ease at which we're looking at it. It seems like for ease of us administering the customers who are our direct customers, but it's making it more difficult for you. And it might also be making it more difficult for us too. So it kind of depends on which way you're looking at it, but.
Right. So when the ISP has to rely on you to tell me what the problem is with the customer, right? Then that puts the burden on you. Right. And that's why the price is $39 instead of $54, right? I can take care of all those issues myself. And, you know, so you're not charging for products that you should be charging people for, but then some of your products like your wholesale internet, DIA, and your 95th percentile billing are way lower than the market for wholesale, right? Those, you know, so you're not charging where you should be charging, and they're charging a lot less than where you should be charging more. I mean, that as a whole, on my side might sound stupid, but then I'm telling you, like, hey, you need to raise your prices here. But I mean, you're literally, you know, at 50 cents a meg or whatever. I mean, that's like 1/8 of what you would pay somewhere else.
So Will, how do you feel about gathering more information and taking those comments into consideration? Kevin, I see your hand up.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
You know, I'm just going to point out a few things. We have talked to neighboring PUDs. A lot of this started with a conversation of Kitsap with Angela. I was on the phone, and we know what they're charging, how they're charging, and she had suggestions. We met with Mason 3. They had suggestions. We're not doing this in a vacuum. We're trying to be as transparent and as fair to everyone that we can be. These rates have been looked at by other PUDs. They're within reason. We will take Leo's suggestion back and look at increasing some of the rates. But really, I want the commissioners to know that this has not been done without talking to neighboring PUDs, how other people do it. Leo's brought up, we need to talk to other neighboring PUDs. We do. And I just want the board to know that, you know, a lot of what we're doing here was driven by visiting with other PUDs, how they're doing it, how they think it should be done in the future, and how things are probably going to be done with a lot of PUDs as they move forward. So I just, commissioners should know, not done in a vacuum, with a lot of input, and it did start with visiting with Kitsap County.
And again, to remind all of us, this is a first touch. Staff was asking for approval tonight. So we are getting input, and staff can listen to that, and commissioners can think about it, and we can, you know, the next time around, if staff feels like there's some changes that can be made, we can do that too. So we're not looking at adoption tonight anyway. So.
And I appreciate your response, Kevin. Commissioner Tupper?
Yeah, again, we're admittedly, we've heard it from staff tonight. We're kind of uncharted territory in a lot of different ways. And, you know, I'm not so sure that we shouldn't really be revisiting our business model overall as we start to keep adjusting these rates. So I would like to make sure that our broadband consultant takes a look at this, in conjunction with the comments that Leo's made tonight, or the comments that he sent out, just to see if there is some sort of common ground there that we can agree on as to where the key areas or critical areas are as we make these changes. The second question is, and this comes out again of things I've heard tonight, and what I saw in the email was kind of this thing of, this is based more on wholesale, but we're going to be a retail ISP as well as the wholesale provider. Is there, lack of better terms, a conflict of interest? Or should we be concerned of an unfair labor practice, maybe in a way that we're benefiting somewhere off the wholesale side that gives us an advantage? Just looking forward from a legal perspective, maybe this is a legal counsel question. Is that something that we should be looking at or taking serious at this point?
Kevin, you have your hand up. Did you want to go, or did you want me to take it?
I just want to throw this out there that Doug Dawson is reviewing Leo's comments. His first response was, there's not much to it, but we are getting his response, and that will be brought back to the board. But like I say, his quick response back, or his response back today was, these are good rates. Things are moving forward. Things we knew would bring these back. So Doug's supportive. At least the emails I've got from him today on this very topic. Thank you.
And I'll just follow up to say that the statute is pretty specific about when a PUD offering rates, terms, and conditions to any entity for wholesale or retail telecommunication services, it's considered preferential or discriminatory if they don't offer substantially similar rates, terms, and conditions to all other entities seeking substantially similar services. So in this case, we're talking about wholesale services. We're not talking about retail services. I mean, we have other costs at the PUD that our ISP customers don't have, that we have to account for, whether we're providing it on a wholesale or a retail basis. So it's really apples to oranges when you talk about retail versus wholesale. And so this is about wholesale services. And, that's all.
Cooper?
Yeah, and one last follow-up question, and this is on the wholesale rates. What sideboards or guidelines are in place? Is there a limit as to how much we can charge on the wholesale side that we have to prove out in some way, shape, or form? Or is it just an arbitrary thing? We can say these are the rates and not give a breakdown on why these are the rates.
Well, I mean, like all rates, they have to be grounded in fact and cost. And that's why, occasionally you do rate studies to make sure that, and that provides the basis for the commission's determination about what's a fair and reasonable rate. So, when I hear Kevin and Will say that they're out there talking to folks in the industry, neighboring PUDs, that's all very relevant, important data that the rates are grounded in to make sure that they're fair and cost-based. So
I have a question.
we don't operate at profit.
I have a question, Will, for the slide you've got there. It's not clear to me, is what's in red, is that totally new
No.
services?
So that's all being proposed to go away. And that's why I wanted to walk you through it. So we're just getting rid of those because they're duplicating efforts.
So what's in red is being deleted.
Where we deleted all of those items, we just
Okay.
created a new IP address at the bottom. We deleted the government transport. We were hoping to just have kind of standardized prices. But in talking with the port and the county, some of the work we might have to do will be covered by interlocals and will be more custom than I was hoping for. So rather than having additional line items, we just are getting rid of those things to simplify the rates as much as possible.
So these are proposed rates and you'll be coming back to us.
So can I get to the proposed rates quickly? These are the existing rates with the changes we would make. This is what we're redlining out. And
Yes.
then I would show you the new rates and I'll
Okay.
explain a couple of things and then I'll be done.
Fair enough.
Okay, all right. So Mr. Boyd brought up that we're not going to be changing how Leo said, we haven't changed anything about his connections other than we've reduced his cost by eliminating a required network transport. He'd still be buying the wholesale PON connection with no IP and no internet. So we've only reduced his cost. When we did that, that means we're not getting as much return per PON customer. And so that individual PON rate has to go up. So that's what we're here for today. And it would be the same for customers who bought internet from us. The internet purchase alone would not provide the margin we need to get the return for our wholesale product.
So Will, I think as I look through this, the thing that's confusing to me is normally when I see like a modified document, the existing that's being deleted is like shown in a strikeout.
Yeah.
And then the new language is right next to it. Like if you had two fees,
Yep.
and the new language right next to it that's new is underlined and not stricken. And but what I'm having to do here is it seems like I have to look at one document in red to see what you're making going away. And then I have to look at the other document in yellow to see what's new.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
could you change it next time around so you're showing them side by side so it's stricken and added? Because that's normally how we do.
Yeah, these are done in an Excel spreadsheet. So that's why
You put two numbers in there and it's all messed up.
yeah,
It doesn't like it.
It's
Yeah.
a little bit of difficulty for this kind of presentation, but it's made it much easier to adjust the rates and apply all the formulas and not have to then cut and paste. Into a
Okay,
Word
crap.
document. So that is why we did it. So the highlighted areas are the only rates that are changing. The bulk
Okay.
of things we've left the same. So we've simplified the wholesale PON categories down from 6 to 2, and then we've raised them. In talking with Doug Dawson, we think we can find some additional margin there. We'll probably bring that back to the next board meeting. The other ones are slight changes. As I said, we've reduced the NRC and we've reduced the difference between the wholesale and retail transport rates. And we've just added a new product, which is IP, and we've changed the little bit of the configuration for some of the other broadband products that we alone will be selling. Those would not. We will resell the IP. We won't be reselling the retail connection sort of thing. So it's not a lot of changes. Like I said, it's simplifying, but it is a significant increase in the wholesale PON from the previous rates to the new rates. And we can work with Doug to try to find some additional margin.
Okay.
I guess I'm looking at this. then page 59 of the packet that's in yellow.
Mhm.
For me, what would be helpful is just to like literally print it out and hand write on there. Okay, you're showing the new, hand write in there the old,
Sure.
so I can see what is the difference.
I can add.
Could you literally do that on?
I can copy and paste some columns in so you see the old red.
I think the old next to the new would be helpful, because then when, you know, Leo or whoever brings up a concern, we can see what the changes are.
And I will bring.
That'd
that
be
next
helpful.
time.
Thank you.
Okay,
So I just cross-referenced one, and one is going from 52 to 54, you know, but I don't know what all the other ones are doing.
Yep.
Significant changes.
Okay, so that is all I have. And then there's just some language changes in the notes that accompany it, but they're minor just to reflect
right.
the products.
so let's move ahead to new business, the first item.
One more question though.
Okay,
Regarding broadband. So, and this is actually an accounting question. So I think Mike Bailey, he handles your accounting, right?
yes,
So the broadband was never created as a separate entity, right? It's still under the power, correct? Okay, so that means that for everything that your retail department does, how are you accounting for that? So, because your wholesale costs, you're supposed to be charging your retail stuff, you're supposed to be paying those costs to your power department, right? So the same cost that I pay for a PON connection, then technically your broadband department owes to your retail accounting owes that to your power. Does that make sense?
I think it makes
No,
Mike
no,
and
that's just not correct.
Mike is in the room
Okay.
more or less.
Right, so it has to be, you have to account for that. You're set up as an excess capacity network that is technically controlled by power. So power is supposed to be charging the other departments for their use.
Mike, do you want to respond to that?
I'm gonna let Joel go ahead and respond first.
Joel, why don't you go ahead and we need to conclude.
I'll be very brief here, Commissioner.
And we'll be picking it up next time. So this
Yeah,
is
we can pick it up next time, but briefly, I mean, the internal charges are not related to retail and wholesale sales. I mean, you just need to account for the use of the facilities by the PUD for its own internal use. That's what Leo's bringing up. It has nothing to do with what Will was talking about. It's a completely separate matter.
So,
I said it was an accounting question.
but it is something that's going to be shown in the budget, presumably, as we go forward. Not
No,
really.
I mean, not really. I mean, I'm not really prepared to answer it without looking into all of it. I mean, we don't pay our own, water doesn't necessarily pay for, I mean, we expense it, but and we do the interdivision transfers of funds. But we can put something together and show it at a later time. Or Kevin's shaking his head no. So
no, I'm actually nodding, and that would be good to come back to this question and show how
we'll come back and we can show everything at a later time.
allocated.
Yep. Yeah, we will come back. We'll bring it back at a later time. Where we're more prepared to answer it.
Where they
Good,
cross over.
thank you. New business. Item 9.1. Kevin, do you want to address this? Don McDaniel's contract renewal?
So, yes, what staff is asking for is an increase in Don McDaniel's contract. We're asking for it for two reasons. Lately, I have been relying heavily on Don to help us with our broadband, our scheduling, our construction. I see that continuing on. And so there for a while, his duties were maintaining. Now I need some extra work out of Dawn. We haven't, staff got increases, Dawn didn't. So this is not only to cover the new duties, but to do the cost of living that others have received. I know I'm not the only one who relies heavily on Dawn. Other staff does, and I know the commissioners do. So that's the request to move Dawn's contract forward for another year.
I'll entertain a motion.
Get it back in front of me here again. I had it. Let's see. We've got a professional services contract, and then you're up in the beginning, you had rats. Dan, if you can find it
Just
quicker.
a simple motion to approve the renewal of the contract for Don McDaniel.
So moved.
I'll second, and then I have a question during discussion.
I guess I made a motion. Go ahead, Don. Go ahead, Dan.
So on page 70 of the packet, I don't know what page of the agreement it is. There's just one change in there. Maybe I think it's item number 4 in there. It says time and duration of agreement still has dates of 2014 through 2015. That's probably something that should probably be updated, or no?
Needs to be changed. Thank you, Dan.
Just one thing I noticed in that when I went through the agreement. So a little bit updating there.
So we have a motion on the floor that's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve contract renewal for Don McDaniel? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thanks, guys.
So congratulations and condolences.
You've been with us for over a decade now. Good job.
God.
So
Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
item 9.2 is the non-represented salary update.
And oh, thank goodness, I couldn't see Melanie and I thought I was going to have to wing it. So Melanie, please jump in.
Okay, so I am presenting the non-rep salary table. There are a few positions that need to be updated in this table. So the first one that's presented is the vegetation and permitting specialist. This is not a vacant position, but we want to make sure the table is up to date. So essentially this position is responsible for administering the vegetation program and also securing certain permits that the organization needs. The second position is a safety manager position, and we're seeing a need for a certain position to take ownership of our safety programs, to have it in a centralized spot. So this person would make sure that we're in compliance. They'd improve and promote our safety programs across the whole organization. They would coordinate safety trainings. There's a lot of internal facing tasks that this person would do for employee safety, but we would also look externally too, some contractor safety related things. So third position is the fiber engineer, and they will work on engineering projects related to broadband, make sure projects are completed in a timely fashion and within budget, assisting our broadband department in doing that. And they'll also be they'll be involved in day-to-day design work of the network. So if there's any further questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, our recommendation is to approve this new table by motion.
So I have one question.
Yes.
So the safety manager, am I hearing you say that the staff is asking for this to be authorized as a position, but you would also look to see, is that something you could just contract for, or would you you would absolutely add the position and may also use some contracting services to supplement what the person in-house does.
It would be the latter. So
Okay.
this would be full-time staff, and for some of our specialized trainings, we would contract out.
Okay, so then I guess the question I have for Kevin is are we seeing this as kind of a new best practice that PUDs are establishing, is hiring an in-house safety person?
So our neighboring PUDs, Clallam, Mason 3, do have in-house safety people. We've had some near misses, and we've tried to make some changes. I hate to do a differentiation, but for example, monthly, the electric department meets, they have a safety meeting, they do the trainings that are required by the WAC. Where we've not done as well as on the water side, to get them into their monthly safety meetings, get them into a WAC compliance. So then we looked at the office personnel. You know, there's a lot of work that we need to do in-house with the CSRs, with everyone else on the safety, and we're big enough now, and this is one of our top priorities. We are looking at this. It was not in a position that was budgeted in 2024, but we are going to eliminate a person that was budgeted to make this. That's how important we feel this new person will be.
Okay, well, and I'm familiar with the type of work. I had a friend who professionally did this in the gas and drilling business, and what he found is it took somebody getting killed, and when somebody got killed and they had big liabilities and OSHA breathing down their neck, they would hire them and they'd bring them in, they'd look at everything, and then if things went on for a while, they'd look to save costs and they'd cut the position, or they'd want to quit funding it. So I think it speaks to your recognizing that we have very significant exposure, and we don't, and they talk at these NRECA meetings and so forth, how many people get killed in the power business every year, and the water business has risk too, anybody digging. So it shows to me that we're being serious.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the updated non-represented employee salary table.
So moved again.
All second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to approve the updated non-represented salary table, please signify by saying aye.
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 So we just have that one new item we added,
There you go.
and I'll see if I can hit it fairly quickly. So Kevin, I got a call today from Chris Nelson, who's the head of Main Street. And she brought up what she said she had spoken to you about several times. And apparently there's some program, some state law that allows for contributions to Main Street to contributors to receive back a credit on their B&O. This is what I'm understanding. You can correct me if I'm wrong. To get a credit on their B&O taxes equivalent to 75% of their contribution. And as Chris pointed out to me, these organizations would see that Main Street provides them a benefit. And she listed off some, like Main Street handles the lighting downtown and has handled some installations of new lighting in some of the open spaces where people congregate downtown. And the connection I made to it was, well, Main Street's dedicated to the economic success of our businesses downtown by creating this environment that they're more successful. And from my perspective, the connection with the PUD is the more that we have a fully occupied downtown with tenants that are paying their utility bills, that indirectly has economic benefits to Jefferson County and to Jefferson PUD. So that's my understanding of the program. And that she said the port contributes 10,000 a year and the city does 100,000, and they've documented the basis for that. So anyway, what's your thoughts on it?
I like the fact that this is a program that allows us to keep our B&O tax in our community. It does cost us a little bit, but it far exceeds what we do with Main Street. They've been a good partner of the PUDs. I do think we should do it. I didn't realize it had to be done by the 15th. I thought we had one more board meeting. And if you remember, about a year ago, we talked about this and we just didn't pull the trigger. But I do think it's a part of being in the community. I think we should do it.
So I'd like to ask Joel if he's had the opportunity to look over this solicitation and to give us an opinion as to whether this is something we can in fact contribute to, and it wouldn't violate the use of public funds to basically support private interests.
We did look at this about a year ago, and I have not looked at it since then. So I would need to refresh my recollection about that, Commissioner. But I suspect it's fine, given, you know, all of the other contributors are municipalities. But I need to take a look at it. I'm happy to do it as soon as I get the materials. So happy to do that.
Commissioner Tupper?
Yeah, my question's one on equity and consistency. Is the Main Street group the only ones who qualify for this within the county or that are pursuing it? Is there anybody else that could make this same ask? I'm just kind of curious if this is a one-off type incident or if this is going to be an every year thing. And if there are other entities that can or will come forward, just kind of curious as to how this thing actually is administrated.
I think they're looking for an annual contribution, so it would be a repeated thing. And I think that's a good question. Does that statute cover other, because they're a nonprofit, Main Street, does it cover other nonprofits? And the thing that came to my mind was when Quilcene was talking to us about supporting their lighting. I thought, well, gee, is this something where maybe if they were a nonprofit, could they get a benefit?
It's not only they're a nonprofit, they've jumped through some hoops to allow them to do the exchange for the B&O. And I want to say a year ago, there's not a lot of Main Street associations, if we use that term, that's actually gone through and done what they need to. So in Jefferson County, last year, now maybe something changed, but they are the only eligible entity for this type of donation.
But we could get a report. I mean, what I'm thinking of is that we could authorize staff to make a contribution like up to a maximum amount, provided that legal counsel confirms that it falls within the statutory intention. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And that at the next meeting, you could come back to us and tell us what you concluded. And if this is a category that other organizations could look at trying to take advantage of in the county.
So I think we can take that direction. And if you have to proceed, Kevin, then the commission could ratify that.
So I guess what I would do is make a motion authorizing the manager to contribute up to and not exceeding $10,000 for 2024, provided that legal counsel concludes that that authorization is consistent with the state statutes. And we kind of leave it up to Kevin to decide, what number up to 10,000 we feel like we're getting benefit for back from Main Street.
So I'll second the motion.
So before we vote, I do have a question, and maybe it's a Mike question or a Kevin question. How much are we paying in B&O taxes?
Hopefully Mike has a better answer than mine. A lot.
Give me just a second and I can
I
tell
want to say
you.
it was like 1.4 million between it and the preference tax. It seemed like we're like 2.5 million or something. So
I don't remember, I don't recall right off the top of my head.
Yeah, I
I'll
think
try
you're a
to see if
little
I
high,
can
Dan.
I think it is high. I think it's close to, I think, want to say 750,000, but
Hmm.
I'm not sure if that's right either. So
Right, well, you can come back to give us some more exact number. Is there any further discussion on the motion that's been made and seconded? You want to restate the motion?
Yeah, the motion was to authorize the manager to, for 2024, to make a contribution to Main Street program up to, but not to exceed $10,000, subject to review by legal counsel that such contribution is consistent with state statutes.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 And thanks for your support on that one, Dan.
So item 10 on the agenda is adjournment. It is 6 o'clock. We've come right up to the wire. Thank you all for your participation. Been a good meeting. We've got a lot accomplished. Have a good evening, what's left of it.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate
Thanks,
the.
commissioners. Yeah.
Good night, all.
Good night.